Hey friend, a quick subscribe means the world to me. I should start with the pain, because that's the only way to keep myself honest. I was 63, stiff in the knees and proud about it, living in a brick 2-flat on the north side of Chicago. That stubborn city where the wind comes in sideways and the snow piles like unpaid debt. I believed I had finally built a family. 7 winters, 7 Christmas trees. 7 years of buying the light bulbs and the piano bench and the orthodontic rubber bands. And the private health plan Rebecca swore we all deserved. I thought my name on every bill was a kind of adoption. Then one evening, paused in the dark seam of the hallway, the door to the living room left carelessly ajar. I heard the sentence that rearranged my bones. "He's not family," my Stepson said. "The one with the good jaw and the permanent smirk he inherited from nobody I recognize. He just needs to know his place." There were laughs. Quick and mean, the kind that come with a hand over the mouth as if cruelty were a joke you tell politely. I've been hit by lake wind that sliced my face open with ice. Those words were colder. I stood there in my own house, an eavesdropper at my own wake, listening to children I'd fed talk about me like I was the cable installer overcharging them for premium channels. Isn't that something? To find out you're a service, not a person. I stepped backward the way you do when you've misread a step and your stomach drops. The carpet complained softly under my heel. I should have barged in and said, "Say that again." I didn't. I have never been quick with confrontation. I was raised to fix, to pay, to smooth. That kind of man is useful right up until the moment he's invisible. Maybe you know what I mean. Maybe you've held your breath in your own kitchen so you don't hear your name said wrong. Rebecca was out that night at a committee meeting for the middle school fundraiser. She came back later with cold fingers and that rush of talk that used to charm me. And I nodded in the necessary places, murmured, "Of course," as if agreement were oil and I was the engine. I made tea for her. I cleaned the mugs. I asked about the budget for the silent auction, like a good man who understands the value of involving himself in domestic trivia. And every few seconds my skull replayed, "He's not family. He just needs to know his place." Sleep didn't come. The house has its ordinary night noises, the furnace coughing, the fridge making those hollow glacier sounds, the L train passing somewhere beyond our block with a tin-ribbed rattle. The noises used to reassure me. I was the one paying to keep them humming. That night they mocked me. I lay awake and did the math of a life. First month's rent when Rebecca's old landlord raised it, the dentist, the summer camp, the car insurance, the Chicago Symphony tickets she insisted would be good for the kids' minds. The piano we bought used from a man in Evanston who cried when we loaded it into the truck. I couldn't remember a single thing I had bought just for me in the past year. Maybe socks. By morning, I had decided on a small, pitiful rebellion. I would not empty the dishwasher. It was stacked full, the steam still on the walls from the cycle. I left it alone. I went to work 3 bus stops and a short shuffle, shoulders bent against a sky the color of pewter, and returned to find the dishwasher emptied, the plates in their usual places, and a note from Rebecca. "Thank you for taking care of this. Couldn't have managed today." The audacity of gratitude for a chore I hadn't done. My first thought was, she's not careless. She's writing the story as she wishes it to be. My second, I am letting her. I didn't speak to anyone about the sentence I'd heard, because the shame of remaining in a place that disrespects you is heavier than the disrespect itself. Instead, I did something I'd never done. I began to keep track. At first, it felt petty. I took the cable bill from the mail and put it not in the drawer, but on the kitchen table. I set the school tuition autopay to send me a confirmation email each month. I saved receipts for groceries, gas, extracurriculars. I told myself it was practical. What it was, honestly, was sacred, a liturgy of proof. The table-filled copy paper curling at the corners, the black toner lubricious on my fingertips. I bought a binder and then a second binder and plastic sleeves that made a satisfying sticky whisper when I slid the receipts in. The kitchen started to smell of warm ink and yesterday's marinara. Every time I tried to eat, I had to move the stacks. You might say I was creating distance between us, but what I was doing was the opposite. I was lowering my face to the ledger of our life and breathing in its ordinary stink. When you can't get love, Sometimes you settle for evidence. My eye for detail sharpened. I noticed how often Rebecca's gratitude arrived without eye contact, as if thanks were a text she sent to nobody in particular. I noticed how the kids know I'm not supposed to call them that. Not now how the stepchildren intoned thanks at the grocery bags like the word itself was a finger snap to open a free-falling trapdoor of money. The boy argued for a pricier data plan. The girl mock sighed when I asked her to turn off lights in rooms she wasn't using. "We're not poor," she said once, a knife disguised as a reassurance. I didn't tell her that wealth is not the absence of worry, but the presence of attention. I didn't tell her that old men like me often fear becoming a burden and so overpay into the illusion that we are necessary. The night I decided not just to collect, but to remember began innocently. A family dinner, roasted chicken, the good plates. They were both on their phones, forks abandoned on the edge of mashed potatoes like tiny surrender flags. I said something gentle, because I was still trying to be the man who keeps peace. "Let's have no screens at the table." The boy didn't look up. "Chill, Kevin. Only that. Not Dad. Not even Kev. Just a syllable thrown in my direction like a chewed-up toothpick." He didn't notice the way Rebecca's hand reached for my wrist under the table and then decided against it. She said nothing. The silence on her side was worse than the disrespect on theirs. I think we both knew what we were choosing that night. She, the treaty that kept her children from accusing her of betrayal. Me, the road that led out of the house. Back in the hallway, in the dark seam again, I watched the light pool on the living room rug. That geometric pattern they all hated, and I had chosen because it reminded me of subway tiles from my childhood kitchen on the south side. I stood there listening to them breathe, the small animal sounds of a family at rest, and told myself that leaving would be unfair. Unfair to whom? The answer hurt. I bought a pocket recorder the next day. Did I tell you I used to think such devices belonged to cowards? I do not think that anymore. It fit in my palm like a confession. I didn't record everything, only the stray comments that formed a pattern. He lives to pay. Ask him, he can't say no. He's fine. He has retirement. I do, or did. It is a finite now. The recorder picked up the L as well, a corrugated whisper, that city voice that says, "You're not special. You're one of us, and we're all alone together." I found a certain comfort in it. Chicago never pretends to love you because you're generous. It respects stubbornness, not sacrifice. I wish I could tell you I was brave right away. I wasn't. I continued to fund the life I was ghosting my way through, but something had tilted. I stopped refilling the fancy coffee pods and switched to a tin of cheap grounds with an old man smell that offended everyone but me. I put my name on the mailbox alone, not Rebecca and Kevin, and when she noticed, she said, "It looks cold," and I said, "It looks accurate." She didn't like the word. Accuracy is unbeautiful. When you are young, indignation is fresh hot as skillet oil. In old age, it simmers quieter, and you can mistake its lack of fireworks for forgiveness. It is not forgiveness. It is concentration. My indignation concentrated. So did my clarity. I began, on Sundays, to take the binders into the basement and sit at a borrowed fold-out table. The concrete cooled through the heels of my hands, and add headings in neat black pen. Mortgage, utilities, education, health. Under each, the months lined up like train cars. I found a rhythm, hole punch, slide, smooth, stack. I did not realize how much comfort there is in naming your losses until I named them all. Every object in that basement bloomed with metaphor. The paint cans with their rust-thick rings were our arguments, sealed and heavy, not to be opened unless you want to ruin your shoes. The old baby stroller Rebecca could not part with sat collapsed against the wall, one wheel forever turning slowly, like time refusing to stay put. The dehumidifier hummed and drank and hummed, faithful and unnoticed. I envied it. I was a man pretending to be a machine, pretending to be a man, and the pretense had finally sprung a leak. You expect me to get angry here, to throw a plate, at least. I didn't. I did something more dangerous. I started to picture the kitchen table cleared of everything that wasn't mine. I imagined the space. I realized how much of my life I had packed with other people's needs. How afraid I have been of empty space. Have you ever learned to trust the empty? It is louder than a crowd at first. Then it becomes a room you can breathe in. Rebecca noticed I was quieter. "Is it work?" she asked, as if the answer were on some spreadsheet out there and not in the ledger of our living. I said it was the season. Winter binds my mouth. She kissed my cheek habit, not heat, and went to answer a text. I could see the blue light flicker on her face. That light is the patron saint of our modern indifference. The night before the confrontation, there was a neighborhood gathering in a condo 2 blocks over. Wine in stemless glasses, trays of things pretending not to be cheese. I stood by the balcony door for air, and a woman I barely knew told me, "You're so good to them." She meant it as praise. It landed as an indictment. Am I? I said, surprising myself. Or am I just consistent? She blinked and moved towards safer conversation elsewhere. We are a species terrified of honest answers. On the walk home, the snow squeaked underfoot with that particular Chicago sound that tells you the temperature before your phone does. I kept my hands in my pockets and counted, not money, but evenings. How many had I spent buying the chance to be included? Hundreds. Thousands. Did any of them change the voice I had heard through the half-open door? Not one. And so the plan came to me the way a good plan ought to. In one bright sentence, I didn't say out loud, "I will stop paying to be erased." I didn't yet know what that would require of me, what it would cost, what it would free. I only knew the first step would be paper. Back in the kitchen, I cleared the table at last. I stacked the binders in 2 precise columns, their spines facing the chair where Rebecca likes to sit, legs tucked under her like a girl. I set a legal pad beside them, wrote the words meaning of family on top, and underlined them twice. A schoolboy's flourish at 63. It was the kind of theatricality I used to mock in younger men who confuse intention for action. That night, it was a promise, and the smallest comfort I'd allowed myself in years. Then, because I am thorough by training and by temperament, I placed the pocket recorder on the table as well. I changed its batteries. I tested the red light. I let it run for a minute, the L passing, the house settling, my breath, then clicked it off. I imagined Rebecca hearing her children's voices as I had heard them, unguarded and blunt, and I felt that unhandsome thrum of anticipation you feel before unnecessary cruelty. Isn't that ugly? The pleasure of inevitability? I won't prettify it for you. Revenge wears its own perfume, cheap, sweet, cloying. It filled my nose. Upstairs, the bed waited with the blank patience of furniture. I lay down but did not undress. My body alert as a dog's, ears turned toward the stairs, toward the door, toward the day that would break whether I slept or not. Outside, the city kept its bargain with the dark. Neon and snow and the tire hiss of late cars on Damon. Somewhere a plow scraped its iron mouth against the street, and the sound bit my teeth. I tried to imagine a future in which I was not, what did the boy say, knowing my place. I pictured a room with a window and nobody asking me for my password to the streaming account. I pictured a stove with one pot. I pictured silence that belonged to me. I must have slept because I woke at 4:17 to the blue snowlight and the taste of pennies in my mouth. I went downstairs and made the bad coffee I'd come to prefer and put on the kettle for Rebecca's tea. Anyway, proof that habit dies kicking. I laid the receipts out for the last time, one by one, like communion wafers for a congregation of facts. I added the number at the bottom in a slow hand, almost 400,000 over 7 years. Not counting the extras no one ever counts. The rides and storms, the apologizing for other people's tantrums, the way you tuck your own needs under your arm and walk them back to the coat closet because there is nowhere else to hang them. At 6:10, I heard the house wake. Pipes talking. A shower. The daughter's hairdryer snarling like a ferret. The boy's sneakers on the stairs. Fast and careless. I stepped away from the table so that the scene would be whole when Rebecca entered. The binders, the recorder, the legal pad, the truth. The furnace kicked once like a tired horse and then steadied. Rebecca's footsteps moved down the hall. She was humming. That broke me a little because I have loved her voice in every season. She turned the corner into the kitchen, saw the table, and the humming stopped. Her face did a small, precise thing, the way women's faces do when they realize a conversation will cost them. She lifted her chin the tiniest degree. a practiced motion that meant, I'm ready. I can fix this. You're overreacting. I knew then that I didn't want anything fixed. Not anymore. Good morning, she said, and her voice decided, against the evidence, to remain cheerful. I reached forward and pressed the recorder's red button. The light came on, obedient and bright. She straightened my tie, then stopped. Her hands trembled. Rebecca's eyes lingered on the binders, as though they might leap up and bite her. She touched the cover of one, let her fingers rest a second, then pulled away. Her robe belt was knotted too tight, her breathing shallow. She wanted to control the scene, but the evidence filled the table between us like a courtroom. You've been keeping score? She asked, forcing a laugh, the kind she used at neighborhood dinners when someone said something embarrassing. I've been keeping proof, I said. My voice surprised me. It wasn't loud, but it had that flat edge of steel. Her eyes flashed. Proof of what? That you're the hero? That you buy things? Kevin, honestly, this is beneath you. No, Rebecca, this has been beneath me. 7 years of it. I pressed play. The voice of her son filled the kitchen. He's not family. He just needs to know his place. Then the girl's chiming laugh. The sound was ordinary, everyday, yet hearing it out loud, unhidden, turned the air heavy. Rebecca flinched. When did you? Where did you? I was there, in the hallway, listening. They're kids, Kevin. Kids say stupid things. They're not kids anymore. They're mirrors. She wrapped her arms around herself. You don't understand the pressure I'm under, balancing everyone's feelings. I cut her off. You've balanced nothing. You've let me be the cushion, the silent sponsor. And they know it. They laugh about it. Her voice sharpened. You think keeping these files makes you righteous. It makes you small, vindictive. No, it makes me visible. I slid another binder toward her. That's $400,000. Do you know what that is? It's the price of my absence. She blinked hard, trying to summon tears, but none came. You're overreacting. Everything feels bigger in winter. You know that. I almost laughed. This isn't the weather, Rebecca. This is our life. We stared at each other across the papers. For once, I didn't drop my eyes first. Finally, she whispered, So what are you going to do? I'm done. Selling my half of the house. Utilities in your name. The car comes back to me. Tuition you and Derek can figure that out. Her face stiffened. You'll ruin them. No, I said, calm now. I'll let them ruin themselves. The collapse came fast, like dominoes. The Wi-Fi cut out one Tuesday evening. The boy stomped around as if I'd stolen his oxygen. The girl begged for her piano lessons back, then accused me of sabotage when I refused. Rebecca's sister called. You heartless bastard. You're abandoning them. Isn't it funny how I turned from provider to heartless the instant I stopped paying? Neighbors whispered in the grocery store. At church, one woman patted my arm with pity, as though I'd lost a job instead of a family. The eldest boy shouted, Petty old man, when I collected my coats. Rebecca herself hardly spoke. She moved through rooms like a ghost wrapped in pride. Packing was a slow funeral. Each object had its judgment. The rug in the living room, I'd chosen it. Everyone hated it. Into the trash. The coffee machine, too expensive, too tied to her mornings. Left behind. My box of receipts, heavy as a tombstone, carried carefully to the trunk. I slept the last nights on an air mattress, the house echoing around me like a cave. On the final morning, I left a note on the console table. If you need help, ask your father. I folded it once, twice neat. No signature. I shut the door softly, as though not to wake the house that had never let me sleep. The studio in West Loop was smaller than the living room I'd just left, but it was mine. The L train rattled the windows every few minutes. At first it felt invasive, then it became a pulse, a reassurance. I bought 2 frying pans, 1 plate, 1 mug. I scrubbed them myself after each meal, marveling at how little mess a single man makes. Loneliness filled the corners. At night I listened to the refrigerator hum, to footsteps in the hallway, to the radiator's hiss. Silence is not peace. It has edges. But at least those edges were mine. I began to walk the streets after dinner, hands deep in my coat, watching couples hurry past with groceries. I thought about what it means to be old and alone in a city that rewards youth. Yeah, I felt lighter too, my back straighter, my breathing easier. And then came the ritual. Each evening, I opened the box of receipts on the narrow bed. I sorted them into piles, drew lines, highlighted dates. The smell of ink and paper became the smell of truth. Some men pray with rosaries. I prayed with invoices. They reminded me that my life had not been a fever dream, that I had, in fact, carried the weight no one thanked me for. The idea of revenge grew naturally, like frost spreading across a window. Not shouting, not violence, just removal, precision. I met with a lawyer on a gray afternoon. He wore glasses low on his nose and had the air of a man who'd seen too many couples dismantle themselves. I placed the binders on his desk. The thud startled him. "Mr. McAllister," he said, "this is exhaustive." "I'm not here to fight," I told him. "I'm here to walk away clean." He leafed through, shaking his head at the totals. "You've carried everything." "Yes." I signed papers as he slid them across the desk. The scratch of the pen felt like chiseling my name onto stone. Mortgage titles changed. Credit cards canceled. Subscriptions closed. Each signature was a small liberation and a small death. When I left his office, the wind slapped me full in the face. But this time, it felt earned. I wasn't a ghost anymore. I was a man with edges sharp enough to cut. Freedom is loud at first. My studio echoed with it. Every footstep, every cough, every scrape of fork against plate sounded doubled, amplified, as though the walls themselves wanted to remind me, "You are alone now." I tried to settle into the rhythm breakfast for one. Coffee bitter enough to wake even the bones. Long walks by the river when the wind wasn't too cruel. But there's only so long you can talk to yourself before you forget the sound of your own laughter. It was in the elevator that I first saw her, Sarah. She lived on the 4th floor, always carrying books in a canvas bag that looked heavy enough to pull her sideways. That evening, I had a sack of groceries, eggs, bread, instant coffee. She glanced at the bag, then at me, and said, "You travel light." I laughed, and the sound startled me. "Easier to wash the dishes," I said. That was the beginning. Small talk, harmless, the kind of exchange that usually evaporates before the elevator dings. But the next time, she asked about the cold, then about the books she carried, then about the neighborhood. The conversation stacked like receipts, ordinary but undeniable proof of something gathering. One Sunday, she knocked on my door holding a pot of soup. "Too much for me alone," she said. The smell filled the apartment. Onions, carrots, thyme, and for the first time since I'd left Rebecca's house, I felt something other than vindication or bitterness. We sat at my little table, knees almost touching, and ate straight from the pot. She asked about my life, and I told her the edited version: marriage, stepchildren, distance. She didn't press, only said, "You were trying to buy belonging." The words cut me sharper than Rebecca's contempt ever had, because they were true, spoken without malice. We began to walk together, along the Chicago River, where the wind bullied us into laughter, through bookstores where she lingered over poetry. She liked small things: old maps, chipped mugs, dogs and sweaters. She never asked me what I could provide. She only asked if I'd join her for coffee, for soup, for silence. In her company, my apartment stopped echoing. Even when she wasn't there, her presence softened the air. I found myself waking with anticipation rather than dread. My heart, which had been nothing but an adding machine for so many years, remembered how to beat in rhythm with another person. And still, every night, the box of receipts sat under my bed. Heavy, insistent. I would slide it out, run my hands over the folders. A reminder, never again. The box under my bed had begun to feel like a second heart. It pulsed even in the dark. Sarah noticed it before I confessed. One night, after we came back from a walk along the river, she saw me kneeling on the floor, lifting the lid, my hands trembling slightly as I spread the folders across the bed. "You treat those papers like holy relics," she said gently, resting against the doorframe. "They're proof," I answered. "Without them, I might convince myself it wasn't real, that I exaggerated, that maybe I was loved more than I was used." She walked closer, touched a page, ran her fingers over the faded ink of a grocery receipt. "These are shackles, Kevin. You already broke free." "Why keep them?" "Because they remind me what chains feel like," I said, "and why I can't ever wear them again." She didn't press further. "That's Sarah curious." "Yes, but never invasive. She kissed the top of my head and left me to my ritual. And so, each night after she went home, I sat in silence, building my strategy not with weapons, but with dates and totals. It wasn't rage that pushed me anymore. Rage burns fast, and I was too old for bonfires. What I felt was colder, a glacier pressing forward with unstoppable patience. Walking away hadn't been enough. Rebecca and the children still lived as if I were there. The bills still arriving under my name, the credit still tethered to me. They were living inside the shell of my sacrifice. I wanted that shell to crack open. The attorney's office smelled of polish and old paper. Downtown, high floor, glass walls overlooking the frozen river. I carried the box in a canvas bag, so heavy the strap dug into my shoulder. When I set it on his desk, the thud echoed. "Mr. McAllister," he said, raising his eyebrows. "What do we have here?" "7 years of my life," I said. He tugged the lid open and lifted the first binder. "Mortgage payments, all yours?" "Yes." He nodded, flipped a few more pages. "Car loan, also in your name. Tuition agreements signed solely by you. Health insurance premiums. Household utilities. Every recurring subscription. Mr. McAllister, this is exhaustive." "I made sure of that," I said. "Now I want it undone." He leaned back. "Divorce filing?" I shook my head. "No, I'm not fighting for assets. I don't want alimony. I don't want furniture or jewelry. I want detachment. Every account severed. Every contract transferred. I want nothing left in my name but my own skin." He studied me. "You could claim reimbursement, you know. Courts would look kindly on this level of documentation. You could reclaim a substantial sum." I almost laughed. "Money isn't the point. If I wanted more money, I wouldn't have spent 7 years bleeding it out. What I want is clarity. Let them stand on their own, or fall on their own. I'm done holding them up." He flipped another page, whistled under his breath. $400,000. That's not a family contribution. That's a mortgage on your soul. I signed where he told me to sign. Documents transferring mortgage responsibility. Car title revisions. Notices to the school demanding the actual father's guarantee. Utilities scheduled to switch names. Subscription cancellations. My pen scratched steadily across the paper, each signature feeling like a vertebra straightening. When I hesitated, just once, the attorney said, "Cold approach." I looked him in the eye. No, clean. Outside, LaSalle Street was a wind tunnel. The gusts slapped at my face, shoved at my chest, but I walked taller than I had in years. The city seemed to conspire with me, gritty, unromantic, efficient in its cruelty. Chicago doesn't give out sympathy. It gives you hard truth. That morning, I felt like I finally belonged to it. I imagined the chain reaction as I strode past the river. Rebecca opening the mailbox to find bills no longer cushioned by my name. The school administrator phoning Derek, asking him to step forward at last. Derek fumbling for excuses, proving once again what he was worth. Rebecca's sister gossiping to neighbors, realizing the provider was gone. None of it required me to lift a finger. Paper would do the work. That night, Sarah made soup again, lentils, garlic, cumin. We sat across from each other at my little table, steam rising between us. I told her what I'd done. She listened, spoon paused halfway to her lips, eyes fixed on mine. When I finished, she said softly, "You've given them back their own lives, or their own ruin," I muttered. "Same thing, really," she said. "It's fair, fair." I rolled the word around in my head. Was it fairness or just vengeance wearing a cleaner suit? The soup smelled of home, of warmth, and yet the question lingered. I reached under the bed later, touching the box one last time before sliding it back into the dark. My gospel, my ammunition, my confession. The receipts had done their work. Now the silence could too. The first ripple was almost laughable. A voicemail from Rebecca that arrived the very week the tuition invoice came due. I listened to it 3 times, not out of confusion, but out of a kind of grim fascination with her tone. "Kevin," she began, carefully neutral, the same tone she used with waiters when she wanted a dish replaced without paying. "The school is saying the tuition didn't clear. They've reached out to Derek for guarantee, which, of course, is impossible. I think you must have made a mistake when you closed the account. Could you call me so we can get this sorted?" I sat in my chair by the window, the recorder still on the table from the morning, and replayed her choice of words. Mistake. Sorted. Not thank you. Not we understand. Not even we'll manage. She still believed I existed for her convenience. A man who could be summoned back into orbit by the right combination of scolding and diplomacy. I deleted the message without replying. 2 days later came the first email from the electric company, a bland formality confirming that the account had successfully transferred into her name. I imagined her opening that bill at the kitchen table where I had once placed the binders. For the first time in years, she would have to fetch her own checkbook, feel the numbers sting her own skin. The children's protests arrived faster and sharper. The boy texted, "WIFI's down. Fix it. No hello. No please. Just the expectation of service." When I didn't answer, another message. "We can't do homework." Mom's furious. Still nothing from me. A third text came an hour later, almost frantic. "What is wrong with you?" I laughed then, laughed out loud in the empty apartment. For all the binders, all the evidence, nothing revealed their blindness better than those words. "What is wrong with you?" As though my refusal to be exploited was a malfunction in me, not in them. The girl's message was different, sweeter, or at least practiced that way. "Please, Kevin, I need my piano lessons. You always said you loved hearing me play." The bait was obvious. She'd caught me watching her once, proud, when she stumbled through Chopin. But I could also still hear her voice on the recorder. "Don't bother asking him. He lives to pay." I closed the message without answering. The wider circle began to close in. Rebecca's sister called late one night, the slur of wine in her syllables. "You've humiliated them," she snapped. "Everyone's talking. Do you want the neighborhood to know what kind of man you really are?" "Yes," I said. "That's exactly what I want." Silence on the line. Then a sputter of curses before the click. The next week, I crossed paths with a neighbor in the grocery store. She tilted her head, half pitying, half accusing. "I heard you moved out," she said, lowering her voice. "That must be hard." "Hard?" I wanted to tell her how much easier it is to breathe when the air isn't poisoned with contempt. Instead, I said simply, "It's necessary." She gave me that tight smile people use when they don't understand but don't want to argue. Then Derek called. That was the strangest of all. His voice crackled with false camaraderie, as though we'd been teammates in some noble game. "Kev, hey, listen," he started. "The school reached out. They're asking for guarantee forms, financial records. You know how it is with my situation. Unstable right now. Can't possibly commit. But you've always been the solid one. Can't you just cover it? For the kids?" For a long moment, I said nothing. I let him sweat in the silence. Then I asked, slowly, "Do you hear yourself, Derek? You want me to fund your children so you can stay comfortable in your absence?" "It's not about me," he protested quickly. "It's about them. They'll be crushed if they have to leave. You know kids. They need stability." "Stability," I repeated, letting the word hang. I was their stability for 7 years. And what did they say? That I'm not family, that I should know my place. "That's kids, Kev. You can't take that to heart." "I took it to the bone," I said, "and I'm finished carrying what isn't mine. You're their father. Do your job." He tried shame next, his voice dropping low. "You'll regret this. When they're older, when they understand, they'll know you abandoned them." "No," I said. "When they're older, they'll know who abandoned them first. And it wasn't me." Then I hung up. He never called back. Rebecca's second voicemail was nothing like the first. "You've made your point," she hissed, clipped, furious. "But you've embarrassed me. My sister, the neighbors, the school, they all see now. Is that what you wanted? To watch us struggle? To punish me for depending on you?" For a brief second, I almost called her back. Not out of guilt, out of habit. That old instinct to soothe, to patch, to fix. But I didn't. I let the phone buzz in the dark until the message deleted itself. News filtered back in fragments. The boy quit piano. The girl transferred to public school. Rebecca borrowed money from her sister, souring a bond that had once seemed unbreakable. Derek vanished, predictably, like fog in sun. The house on the north side no longer looked like the fortress of family I had once tried to build. It was a sagging shell, struggling to stay upright without the invisible beings I had been. And me? I sat at my small table in West Loop, the train rattling past, the skyline shining indifferent, sipping my bitter coffee. Not triumphant, not even joyful, just steady. Revenge, I learned, doesn't taste sweet. It tastes metallic, like biting a coin. Cold, sharp, undeniable. Satisfaction, yes, but laced with the reminder of how much you spent to get here. One evening, Sarah reached across the table, her hand over mine. "Does it feel finished?" she asked softly. I thought of Rebecca's messages, of Derek's cowardice, of the children's indignation. I thought of the silence that followed, the kind of silence that means someone finally understands you're not coming back. "Finished enough," I said, and for the first time, I believed it. Peace crept in like dawn light through thin curtains, slow, almost shy, but steady. For the first time in years, I woke without the weight of expectation pressing on my chest. No bills waiting in the drawer with my name on them. No children rehearsing their next demand. No wife calculating which part of me could be bartered for her comfort. Sarah filled the space instead. Not with noise, she was not loud, but with presence. A hand brushing mine as we crossed the street. Her laugh, quick and honest, breaking open my silence. The soup simmering on my stove when I came back from a walk. It's astonishing how little it takes to feel human again when you've been treated as furniture for too long. Still, the box under the bed was there, humming in the dark like a stubborn machine. One night, when Sarah was asleep beside me, I pulled it out and found an old receipt for piano lessons. The paper was curled, the ink faded. I remembered how proud I had felt watching her daughter stumble through Chopin, how quickly that pride had curdled when I overheard her mocking. My throat tightened. I slid the receipt back and thought, all this money, all this effort, poured into children who never saw me. And then the idea struck. If I couldn't change the past, I could change what the past built. I met with an accountant, then a local nonprofit director. I established a small scholarship in my mother's name, the Margaret McAllister Fund for Children Raised by Grandparents. Kids who knew love that wasn't measured in allowances or car rides, but in sacrifice and patience. Filling out the paperwork felt strange. Instead of writing checks into a void, I was planting something. A few months later, the first thank you letters arrived. Crayon drawings from children. A careful note from a grandmother. "Your fund allowed my grandson to join the music program. He plays every night, and it makes the house feel alive again." I folded that letter neatly and placed it in the box alongside the receipts. For the first time, the box didn't just carry weight. It carried redemption. Our wedding came quietly, like everything worth keeping. We went downtown on a gray Thursday, carrying nothing but our IDs and rings we had chosen together in a small jeweler's shop on Wabash. Sarah insisted hers should be simple gold, no stones. "I don't need sparkle," she said, slipping it on. "I need truth." The ceremony was brief. 2 witnesses, a clerk who read the vows without looking up from the script. And yet, when Sarah's voice trembled as she said "I do," I felt more seen than in all the grand dinners, all the holiday photographs, all the stage performances of my former marriage. Afterward, instead of a banquet hall and polite applause, we went home. Soup on the stove, mismatched bowls, laughter when I spilled a ladleful onto the counter. We toasted with cheap wine and slept in the same narrow bed where the box still rested beneath us. It was not glamorous, but it was honest. I had finally found love that cost nothing but attention. But life, of course, doesn't close its accounts so neatly. Months later, Rebecca wrote to me. A real letter, delivered in an envelope with her familiar handwriting. "Kevin," she began, "I hope you're satisfied. The children are angry, confused. Derek has disappeared. My sister resents me for borrowing. I feel betrayed, not just by you, but by the version of you I thought I knew. I don't expect forgiveness, but I can't stop asking why you had to make it so public, so cruel. You could have left quietly. You chose humiliation instead." I read it twice, maybe 3 times. Then I set it down beside the scholarship letter from the grandmother. 2 truths, side by side. One accusing me of cruelty, one thanking me for salvation. Perhaps both were right. Revenge rarely travels alone. It brings justice in one hand and bitterness in the other. I didn't reply. Silence was the only answer left. Now, most nights, I stand at the window of my West Loop apartment. The L snakes past. The skyline flickers in indifferent light. Chicago doesn't love you, doesn't hate you. It tests you. It forces you to endure. I think that's why I belong here more than I ever belonged in that house. Because endurance, in the end, is my inheritance. Sarah sometimes joins me at the window, her head resting against my shoulder. She asks what I'm thinking, and I tell her honestly that I survived. Do I feel victorious? Not exactly. Triumph is too clean a word. What I feel is sharper, stranger, a kind of clarity that tastes metallic, like biting a coin. I know I paid dearly for it. I know I will never sit at certain tables again, never be called by certain names. That is the cost. But I also know this. I am no longer invisible, and I will never again pay for love that refuses to see me. Thank you for staying with me and listening this far. Your attention is a gift. Every click from you is a push that helps me keep bringing stories that truly stay with us.